Welcome back to another episode of Today's Premier Experts. I'm your host, Ray Perez, and today my special guest is Coach Chuck Barnard, who is the Champions Mindset Mentor. Welcome to the show, Chuck.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm super excited. This is going to be a great episode because I love the topic of mindset and leadership, and that's where you thrive. So can you share with the audience a little bit of background and how you got started?
Sure. Well, I kind of grew up in what I kind of call a Leave It to Beaver family. And my mom's side of the family, lots of education, a lot of educators. My great-grandfather, grandfather, my mom's brother. Education was kind of in the blood, but I didn't think I was going to kind of go that route and graduate from college with my degree in economics, and I was going to light the world on fire, make money. That all didn't happen, and I ended up, Tony Robbins, right, was kind of his book, Unlimited Power, kind of grabbed my attention. And I was like, wow, this is awesome stuff. So I went out to California with the intent of meeting him and walked on burning coals and all that. And I ended up getting certified in neuro-linguistic programming. And then I came back home and I was going to kind of like, oh man, I got to teach this to like people. This is awesome stuff. And I was getting little workshops there. I was working with some athletes, some high school athletes, and loving all that, but I was having a hard time making money. And, I kept spending money the wrong way. I had no clues how to run a business. I ended up having to declare bankruptcy, which that's not exactly, one of the fondest moments, but I was like, damn, I'm gonna keep going. And one thing led to another, and I ended up, because I was working so much with kids, and like, all right, you know what? People have been telling me I should be in education my whole life. So I said, all right, that's what I'm going to do. So I tried to go back to school, and the first program I applied for, I didn't get into. And then I finally got into a program because a woman loved my background in NLP, and one thing led to another, and I finally got a job working in a school where kids had a lot of emotional behavioral issues. And it's actually where I met my wife, and that's a story in and of itself. But that led to another position that I created actually in my hometown, day treatment program for kids who had behavioral and emotional challenges. And then I went from there to a school district that had started an alternative program. Not quite as, the behaviors weren't quite as severe, but the bottom line with all those students was they didn't function well in traditional classrooms. They had a whole lot of limiting beliefs and decisions. And my job over these last 30 years has been trying to help those kids shift their mindset, essentially from what we call a growth mindset, from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And that's kind of what I've been doing for the most part. And all those years on the side, I was working with athletes, from my own kids and even well before, because I loved working with sports, and I knew that this stuff can really help athletes. So, and it was never, like I never really ran a business. I just, yeah, I can help you, and this is what I'll charge, and this kind of thing. And that's
one thing led to another.
One thing led to another, and now I've, this past year has been, I've had to really apply all the things I've learned. Not even a year ago, I lost my wife to cancer. So, that was, it's been a challenging year. And I've had to apply what I've taught and preached and lived, and I'm ready to start the next chapter. And really, over the last 2 years, I've been building to this point. And, this is it. This is my full-time gig.
So, first of all, I love that you practice what you preach. Because one thing is to coach leadership, to coach, a mentorship and the mindset. Another thing is to actually have gone through it yourself and to be able to live the example that you're teaching. And I love the fact that you You have different, niches that you work with. You work with business professionals, you work with enterprise and teams, but your passion is the youth, and specifically the collegiate athletes.
Yeah.
And can you share a little bit with the audience in that specific niche that you work on, why is it so important to teach leadership and mindset to our youth and to our athletes?
Yeah. There's so many mental health issues going on right now, and it's not immune to the college athlete. There's all kinds of data out there. 60-some-odd% of college athletes are experiencing high anxiety. That's impacting not only their performance, but also their academics and their social relationships, right? When you're feeling that anxiety and that even the depression and all, you just can't perform as well. And there's a lot of pressure for them to achieve and to excel and be all that. And they haven't really been taught on how to deal with that. And they're also finding out that 2.3 times more likely to get injured if you're feeling those negative emotions and all that.
Because they're not fully focused on what they're doing.
Yeah, and the mind-body connection, right? You can't, when you're feeling that anxiety, your body tends to tense up. You don't, all that stuff, you're holding on to it, you're wearing it, so you're more likely to get hurt as well. So there's that need, but one thing we don't often appreciate or understand, when you're carrying around limiting decisions. So there's one college athlete I worked with who, by his own words, was a mediocre pitcher at a small Division III school. But his coach had said, this kid's got Division I talent, right? But he didn't believe in himself, didn't believe in that. Relationship, I mean, it was all coming in. He's feeling it. So after I worked with him after his sophomore year, when coach got in touch with me and was like, he needs some help, and the kid was, yeah, okay, I'll meet with him. And the whole process we go through, the whole work that we go through, he had a breakthrough, not just a year, but 2 years. He didn't lose another game as a pitcher for the last 2 years, and then he got a chance to play professionally for 3 years after that.
Wow.
And it was really about showing him how to let go of all that. But when you do that, this is the amazing thing, right? When you don't have that confidence on an unconscious level, right? When you aren't even really aware of some of those negative beliefs you have, but when you let that stuff go, you begin to walk different. You carry yourself different, and guess what? Your leadership begins to happen because people gravitate towards you because you aren't being weighed down by that ball and chain, of all those negative beliefs. And even some of the elite athletes who are really good at that don't understand that there's little things in their background that they're still carrying around with them, and that if they really want to gain some of the consistency, you let that go. Just doing that itself could have a profound impact on your performance in the classroom, on the field, and your relationships, because you're cutting that chain. You just kind of, it's like, wow, I didn't even realize I was carrying that around with me.
Wow. Well, what I love is that through your programs and through your coaching and through your process that you put these youth through, they don't just perform better on the field, they perform better academically, and they start becoming better leaders so that they can have life skills that they can take into their community, they can take into their church, and they can take into their families and everything they do. Explain why this level of education when it comes to mindset and leadership is so important, not just for their schoolwork and for their sports, but for their future.
Yeah, well, when you really think about people's success in life, it's really not always what you know, right? It's all those personality, all those character traits, all those leadership things that come through. And so much of the limits on that are artificial caps that we put in. So there's an old experiment done with fleas in a little petri dish, right? Those little petri dishes. And they put fleas in, and the fleas just jump out, right? And then they put a cap on that, and the fleas jump, and they hit the cap. And when they take the cap off, the fleas no longer jump out. Well, when people get rid of that cap that they put on their own thing.
At the glass ceiling?
Yeah, the glass ceiling, they begin to blossom, and it impacts. One of the big things that really impacts is relationships, and the number one factor in longevity, health, and happiness is the quality of your relationships. And when you feel good about yourself, when you love yourself, it's easier to love your neighbor, right? When you don't really love yourself, it's kind of hard to love other people. And we don't understand the negative emotions we hold on to and those decisions and all that, how much they impact. And it can be from whether it's family history that you don't really think about or know about, past relationships. It's not always just the athletics, right? It's other things that they cross over. So that's really kind of that initial piece. And then once we've done that, then we can start building a mindset, right? So I often refer to this idea of building a bridge. And the bridge is a stone arch bridge. The arches represent different mindsets. And it's a powerful metaphor for what's going on, right? And the keystone that holds it all together. But that's kind of the metaphor we use in that bridge that gets you from the land of quiet desperation to the land of fulfillment and happiness and longevity and all that stuff.
Wow.
So.
Well, I mean, this is amazing. I know you do private coaching with not only the athletes, but also with business professionals. You do corporate training for teams, and then you host different retreats and masterminds and events where you bring the different groups together. Can you share a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so when you bring a group together and you start, self-discovery is really where it all begins, right? And then you begin to set up, so you learn about all the different things that have been holding you back. We go through that whole clearing process. We do all that. And then you begin to talk about how you're going to build the rituals in your life that are going to build those habits. I refer to this heat, right? We apply heat to your life. It's habit, emotion, attitude training, right? That's what it is.
Heat.
Heat.
Habit, emotion, attitude training. Oh, I love it.
Well, creating habits, we all know, because we've all made like New Year's resolutions that we have a hard time keeping, right? It's a lot about accountability. So when you're there at a group and you start connecting and we build a community beyond that, right? So there's places online that you go, community, you start sharing the struggles and the challenges and you work with each other. We sign contracts, right? We work on contracts right there to hold each other accountable. And then you start, these are going to be the rituals we're going to build in our lives, and we begin to go through that whole process. So, you leave there, and that's the start of a whole 70-day kind of training on becoming your own life coach.
I love that. Wow, that's beautiful. Creating that community, that accountability, and those relationships, like you said, because everything's about relationships, and the better relationships you have, the better relationships you can cultivate. So let's talk a moment. Let's shift over to your book. Share a little bit about what you share in your new book.
Yeah, Mindset Journey, and really all this is it's a bunch of articles that have been written by me over time about the power of mindset and relationships, a lot of different avenues. Love is actually a theme that runs through that, because really the foundation is a love mindset, right? I mean, when you think about the characteristics of love, of patience and kindness and not being dishonoring of others and being hopeful and perseverant and all those quality traits that love is, it's like that is a natural leader, right? I mean, we're all drawn to people who would have those qualities, that kindness and the hopefulness and all of that. We are pushed away from just the opposite, right? So there's a whole bunch of articles that just talk about the practical applications of that, those different characteristics, how we do that. Resiliency is another thing, right? Is a theme through that, but it's all, the general theme of the whole book is the quality of the relationships, which, even with athletes, right? One of the things that I've talked about with the psychology of winning is one of the things that, you think of the Miracle on Ice, right? That the hockey team that beat the Russians and all that. It was really about the chemistry. We hear that word all the time, the chemistry of the team, the way they connect. Well, that's relationship stuff, and that's finding the common bonding, and that's a lot of these mindset issues that a team could rally around and can learn to connect with, and it just, it bumps them up a whole new level. And team, athletic team, corporate team, families, right? All those things. So yeah, it covers the gamut.
Well, I love the concept of like leading with love, right? Because as you know, you're a philanthropist, you give back, you do a lot of charity work. My nonprofit organization is called Influence with Love, for the exact same reason you just shared, because I believe that we should lead and use our influence in the world with love, because that's the only way that we're going to be able, through showing love, is how other people can receive and give, and the ripple effect. So I just love that that's like the premise of your book.
Yeah.
So good, so good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, first of all, I love what you're doing. I appreciate that you don't just work with adults and business professionals, that you also work with the collegiate athletes and the youth, because that's really our future generation. So I just want to acknowledge you for that and thank you for that. And if our audience wants to learn more about your coaching programs, whether it's for their kids and the students, or whether it's for them as a business professional, or they have corporate teams and they want to get a copy of your book, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best way to connect with me is on my personal site, CoachBarnard360.com. You can connect with me through all my social media. You can check out my videos. You can check out my programs. You can check out all the different websites I have. You can even text me, call me, email me, all in one place, and that is CoachBarnard360.com.
Well, that's awesome. So, Coach, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for joining us on another episode of Today's Premier Experts. I'm your host, Ray Perez, reminding you to never leave for tomorrow what you can do today, and always stay true to your brand.